Hey, everybody. Good morning. Roman Polnar here from Pillar 6 College Planning. And welcome to this episode of Financial Aid Wednesdays. And today I want to talk a little bit about kind of a provocative subject, and that is that the FAFSA deadline is totally irrelevant and you shouldn't care about it anymore. But before you think I've gone completely crazy and out of my mind, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. And then the second thing we're going to talk about today are the two biggest killers of financial aid. And I'm going to do these two things as I do every week to help you find and get the highest financial aid awards so you can send your kids to college with ease without loading them or yourselves up with loans and debt that is going to take years and years to pay off and actually make college even more expensive. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is that the fact that the FAFSA deadline really is irrelevant. So, if you've got a college bound student in high school, especially if they're a senior, forget about the deadline. It does not matter. And like I said before you think I've gone completely crazy, I know there is a deadline, obviously. But if you want to get more money from the financial aid system to help you pay for college, the FAFSA deadline is irrelevant to you because the only thing that you should care about and the only thing that matters is you getting the money. Well, you know that you getting the money from the financial aid system requires that you get the FAFSA completed, but you got to get the FAFSA in as soon as humanly possible. And that should be your number one priority because the reason for that is simple. The best financial aid goes first. Things like grants, scholarships, and tuition discounts, those dollars are limited. And so, once they're gone, they're gone. You're not going to see them again for the next year, which now brings me kind of to this next point, which are the two biggest killers of financial aid. And those are number one, procrastination. Yep, good old human procrastination. Number two are errors. And I don't know if you know this, you probably don't, but the two biggest, the biggest Google search over the last few weeks has been the FAFSA deadline. That's what people are looking for. And so if you're looking for financial aid, and you should be asking a very different question. And all those folks out there searching for FAFSA deadlines should also be asking themselves a very different question. That question should be, how do I get my FAFSA done quickly? And technically, the second thing they should be asking themselves is, how do I get the FAFSA done correctly? Because, like I said, the two biggest killers of financial aid is procrastination and errors. So let me talk a little bit about that. By the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat below or in the comment section below, depending on where you're watching this live cast. And I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. But the biggest reason families struggle to get enough financial aid is because of time. Uh, we talked about this in prior live casts, but the government gives you something like 19 months to complete the FAFSA. It becomes available on October 1st in your kid's senior year of high school and every year thereafter. So every year that you're going to want financial aid, you got to complete the FAFSA. So October 1st is when the form becomes available. The government then gives you something like 19 months to complete the form. And so naturally, a lot of people put that in the back of their mind and they say, I've got time. I'll do it later. Now, some people also recognize that it's not the federal deadline that matters the most. They also then realize that colleges have their own deadlines, and all of those are a lot less than 19 months. Um, then some people also realize that different states have different deadlines for the FAFSA. And so, they do their best to then shorten that FAFSA timeframe to fit whatever college or the state requires, right? Which is less than the government. And that's what they do. And they're wrong for doing it because if they wait until that kind of 11th hour before the FAFSA is due, by the colleges or the states, it's too late. The best type of financial aid would have already been committed to other families and given out. And so by then, the only thing you can really expect are loans, loans to your student or loans to you as the parent. And to me, that's not financial aid, and it should not be financial aid to you because, what we're looking for is free money, money that you can just use to pay for college that you don't have to borrow or ever pay back. So loans obviously goes without saying have to be paid back and paid back with interest, which makes college even more expensive than it already is. So we know that. All right. So, what deadlines should you care about? None. You should care about your own deadline, and that is get your FAFSA in as soon as possible. Now, it is November 3rd. The FAFSA has been open now for a month and 3 days. It will continue to remain open for a long time. Don't worry about the deadlines. Don't worry about the federal, the state, or even the college's deadlines because your goal should be to get that FAFSA done as soon as possible. So if you can commit to getting the FAFSA done in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll be in much better shape than everybody else that's not watching this live cast and is waiting until one of those three artificial deadlines. And those deadlines are not going to serve them well. The second thing that you have to remember is that you got to get the FAFSA in correctly. And if you rush, just like anything else in life, when we rush, we tend to make mistakes or we tend to fall into some traps because we don't see them. We're just rushing through things. It's natural. That's how, we get a speeding ticket. You go too fast, you don't pay attention, and you get clocked on the radar. That sucks. And it doesn't help you get to wherever you were going on time. It's going to take more time. So, anyways, I'm restating the obvious. But what does that mean? So, people often will make the same mistakes on their FAFSA that even if they complete it on time, but they make simple errors or they fall into some of the most common traps, they're effectively going to lose out on valuable financial aid that they could have gotten, should have gotten, and would have gotten had they just done it correctly. Now, I've done a few live casts on this topic, and we even have a free ebook with the top 5 mistakes that families make on the FAFSA and ways to avoid them. If you haven't gotten that yet, go to FAFSAdoneright.com. I believe that's the right website, FAFSAdoneright.com, and download your free ebook. But here's the point, and this is what I was sort of thinking of this morning as I was preparing to have this conversation with you all, is I remember to when I was a kid, and I used to play Super Mario Brothers. Now, I don't know if you played that game. Chances are you probably have. And I remember that the Super Mario had a task at every level. Yeah, we were supposed to go from beginning to end before the timer ran out. But along the way, there were these plants that were eating him, right? I think there were mushrooms that were falling on his head and like things swinging with spikes on him. And they were all designed to kill him, right? And our goal was to get Mario across all of those obstacles or through all of those obstacles without getting killed and wiped out and before the timer ran out. Financial aid is kind of like that. So when you go to fill out the FAFSA, there is a clock. But please remember, the clock is not about the deadline that the government sets for you or the state sets for you or even colleges. The deadline should be your own. And that deadline is get the FAFSA done as soon as you possibly can, because then there are 20 million other people that are going to be lining up trying to get the same money. And you want that money to go to you and your student. But you also got to get it done right, because if you rush, just like you would through a game, you're bound to make simple mistakes. You're bound to not see some of those threats that are coming right around the corner, and you're bound to step into a trap. And those traps, when it comes to financial aid, are costly. They can cost you a lot of lost financial aid. I talked about my own story in one of the previous live casts. I won't go into it now to spare you from having to listen to it again, but I'll give you a very brief version. And that is, I made every single mistake that I think could be made on the FAFSA when I was applying to colleges and for financial aid. I didn't realize it at the time, and the reason for that is because I felt the victim to these 2 traps. Number 1, I procrastinated because I didn't know any different. I went to my college counselor and she gave me a form and said, "Fill it out and submit it." And I looked on the form. This was before Google, but on the form it literally gave me the deadline. And the deadline wasn't for months. So put it on the desk and it sat there collecting dust for a long time because, well, it wasn't due. So if it's not due, why would I do something? Right? I mean, think about this. Can you believe that there are people out there that procrastinate? Imagine that. People are busy. You've got things to do. Or maybe you're procrastinating because the thing that you got to do isn't very fun and it gives you no immediate satisfaction or pleasure. And so you naturally kick the can down the road knowing you got to get it done. But why do something you really don't want to do unless it's really, really, really due the next minute? So it's normal. Congratulations, you're human, like I am. So I made all of those mistakes. I waited until the last minute, and then when I submitted the FAFSA, I was rushing through it so fast that I never took the time to learn, like, what does the damn thing even want me to answer? And the questions are misleading. I told you about this in previous live casts. And if you want to listen to those, just go back here on Facebook or here on YouTube. And if you've got questions, just email me. And if anything, we'll send you the right information. But I fell into all the traps that the FAFSA set up for, like, all of us. And I don't think they set those traps intentionally, but the financial aid system is just complex, and it's been sort of iterated for years and years and years. They never really ironed out all the wrinkles and they just kept, adding more and more stuff to it. So at this point, it's just kind of a confusing form. So it's easy to make mistakes. It's easy to answer questions incorrectly. It's easy to overreport the value of the money that you have to report, letting the government think that you have more money to pay for college than you really do. That's the biggest error. I made those. Long story short, I didn't get the financial aid that I should have gotten, could have gotten, and would have gotten had I just submitted the form on time, or early is on time when it comes to financial aid. And had I avoided making the same common mistakes, I just lost thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of financial aid. That's why I do these conversations, is to help you avoid making the same mistakes that I did. And so the thing that I want to leave with you in this conversation is just remember these 2 things. If you want to get more financial aid to pay for your kids' college without having to rely on loans, then do these 2 things. Number 1, you got to go fast, but don't rush, because when you rush, like anyone, you'll make mistakes, and those mistakes are going to cost you a lot of money. So when it comes to the FAFSA, if you've got a high school senior right now and you have not yet done the FAFSA, go, 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 go. Go fast. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait. Do it now. But don't rush, because if you do, you're bound to fall into some of these traps. And we don't want that for you. So if you want to know, if you want to get some help in getting the FAFSA done quickly, but getting it done correctly, making sure you don't make any of the mistakes that families commonly make, let me know. Drop it in the comments below. I'll send you the training for free that you can use to avoid making those mistakes, or you can go to FAFSAdoneright.com yourself. If somebody wouldn't mind putting that in the chat, I would really appreciate that. And go click on that link, and it's going to give you not only the ebook, but we also have a simple to follow checklist that I will guarantee to help you get the FAFSA done in 2 weeks or less, or I should say, prepare to get the FAFSA done. But it'll only take you about 30 minutes to get it done. So if you're watching this today, I can promise you 2 weeks from now, your FAFSA can be submitted. You can be in line for financial aid. And if you do it now, there's still a really good chance you're going to get free money. You don't have to rely on loans because it's not too late. But you'll also avoid making the common mistakes because you're going to get the FAFSA done correctly. And I believe we even have a 2-year guarantee on that. So here it is, folks, on record officially. Go get the FAFSA checklist and you'll have a 2-year guarantee. So if you don't get the financial aid in 2 years, let me know and we'll give you 100% of the money back. But I'm positive you're going to get a lot of financial aid, especially if you follow all the steps that we outline. But You might be thinking, well, what if I don't have a high school senior? What if my kids are still a bit younger? Do I have to go fast but not rush? Yes, you do. Because there's something that you should do in every single year that your kids are in high school. I'll talk about those in some of the future live casts. I want to focus, though, right now on families with high school seniors because you have the least amount of time to get all these things done and get them done correctly. Unfortunately, the time is not on your side. So I hate to say it, but it's true. So why ignore it? The elephant in the room is timeline. You got to get it done quickly. So don't delay. Don't procrastinate. Don't think you'll do it whenever. Don't wait and ignore all of those deadlines. They're meaningless. It's not like a sweepstakes where, you got to get your entry in by a certain time and then it goes through a random drawing. It doesn't work like that. It's not like a sale that you're trying to, get to the store 5 minutes before the sale runs out. It doesn't work that way. With financial aid, the money is being given out in live, present day, minute by minute. So families that get their FAFSA in first, families that do it correctly are going to start getting their allocation of free financial aid first. And that money is limited. Once it goes, it's gone. So don't delay. Ignore the deadlines. Go get your FAFSA done now if you haven't already. But first, take care to make sure you're not making the same common errors and mistakes that families make, that I've made, that I've talked about. Check out the FAFSA kit. Go get your FAFSA done quickly. Don't rush. Take your time. But if you get your FAFSA by the end of November, I think you still have a really good chance of getting some pretty good financial aid. All right. I won't hold you here any longer than I have to. I hope this has been helpful. And I'll go back to remind you that the deadline officially is irrelevant. Don't rely on it. And don't fall victim to these two killers. Don't procrastinate. Get the FAFSA done now. And don't make errors. They cost money. So get it done fast, get it done right. And with that, I'm going to close. I wish you all the very best. If you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. If this is helpful, hit like just so I know that it's helpful and share with those friends that might have a high school senior who's college bound who needs to do this right now. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for watching.